Hello there, welcome back to the channel. This is Nerdworld Empire, and this one is the big one. We are talking Krennic's station, not Degra's battle station, starship, weapon system, weapon of mass destruction, created by the Xindi to destroy the disgusting, violent and destructive humans. We are of course talking about the Xindi super weapon being developed to destroy Earth, wipe out the human race, and ensure a safe and secure future for the Xindi. Before we get started, please like, share, subscribe, comment down below, and get the elephant in the room out of the way. This is clearly inspired by the Death Star. You ain't getting away from it, Star Trek. I'm sorry. It's big, it's spherical, and it destroys a planet. You could have at least made it a cube. At least that's Star Trek consistent. Moving on. This was a weapon of nature of which was a little unknown, but it was basically a very, very powerful phaser. It was a particle beam weapon that utilized an unknown power source, a major component of which was chemosite, heavily refined and weaponized. The actual construction of the device was developed and executed by the Xindi, of which there were 5 remaining species. The weapon itself was built by one race called the Aquatics, but was designed in conjunction with all 5, with each race contributing something different. The head researcher of the project was a Xindi primate scientist known as Degra, a well-respected and well-known engineer and scientist, an extremely competent, if not misguided, scientist. The original prototype of this weapon in 2153 would be launched against Earth and would cause a lot of destruction and many millions of deaths. Now, it should be pointed out, we're going to discuss later in this video, the flaw in the Xindi's tactic, which I'm sure you can already identify just from that one statement. The weapon was probably begun its development in the 2130s or 40s, the original prototype being a single-manned craft capable of vortex travel, equipped only with the primary weapon with a single fire use as far as we can tell, at which point it then self-destructed and crashed the planetary atmosphere. Unluckily for the Xindi, the pilot's corpse would survive, as would components of the craft, which, along with a little help from some time agent of the future, they were able to figure out where the weapon had come from and who had built it. And Starfleet would launch one of its premier vessels to go and investigate this alleged attack by this race they'd never heard of, known as the Xindi. Degra would continue to develop the weapon, creating further, more advanced versions and new prototypes that will be tested in the Expanse, one of which would attempt to be stolen by the Andorians to be used against the Vulcans, something that Archer would prevent, of course, and the Andorian commander, Shran, was actually deathly against and didn't wish to really do this, believing that such a monstrous weapon was wrong, and actually the Andorian Imperial Guard should be assisting Earth in trying to destroy this weapon, not trying to commandeer it for themselves. The main weapon was built, as I said, by the Aquatics. This was a much larger version, several hundred meters in diameter, which had enough power to destroy a planet and was, unlike the earlier prototypes, repeat firing. In other words, it could be used more than once. You didn't have to just fire and forget and have to build an entirely new one or rebuild its power matrix. It's likely you did have to replace the fuel or energy reserves, but it was reusable as a weapons platform against multiple targets. The original Xindi plan would have been to destroy Earth, then Mars, Proxima, and other such human worlds, probably eventually even finding worlds like Novus to get rid of them. And we do know that in an alternative timeline they were successful in this, even hunting down the humans in the SETI Alpha system, which ultimately we all know through future events wouldn't be exactly a system that was conducive to human life, shall we say, in the far future. But nonetheless, the Xindi would make this weapon to destroy the humans, and it was actually an incredibly well engineered weapon system. To appreciate the beauty of it in and of itself, and forgetting the horrendous ramifications of the use of such a device, it was actually a remarkable feat of engineering to produce in the first place. And we do know that the Xindi, although a very advanced people, were probably not truly capable of developing this. Their actions were being guided by transdimensional beings simply known as the Sphere Builders, or as they know, the Guardians. They even contributed components, at least to the original prototype, which was used to attack Earth, which were from the future, from the 26th century. How they got them to them, we don't know, but they did manage it. They were able to move things and people and individuals through time. The Xindi even experimented with other ideas to attack Earth, which is what we will get to now. Ultimately, the weapon was destroyed by a combined force of Xindi, Andorians, and humans who would ultimately destroy it. Now, getting to the Xindi's battle plan, there's one simple glaring mistake the Xindi made, aside from believing transdimensional beings that their homeworld was going to be destroyed by a race they'd never heard of, but instead of trying to find a peaceful resolution, which seems a little more in keeping with the aquatics, arboreals, and primates' nature, they jumped straight to allowing themselves to be manipulated to destroy this species. Now, the flaw in their tactic was attacking Earth in the first place. If they hadn't have attacked Earth and hit Florida like they did, humans never would have known the attack was coming. That weapon would have simply materialized in orbit, destroyed Earth, and the Xindi would have won, and the transdimensional beings would have won. It's likely, in their haste, that the Xindi wanted to attack. It was probably the reptilians or the insectoids, who were known to be a little more belligerent and impatient, who wanted to push forward the attack. That much is pretty much clear. There are also other elements we can consider. No two planets are exactly the same. Now, although with sufficient power the weapon can destroy a planet, any weapon could destroy a planet with sufficient enough energy, clearly, we have to factor in that perhaps the weapon wasn't quite as destructive as we think it was and had to be calibrated. They might have needed to know a little bit more about, say, the mineral density of Earth, what its core was made of, how strong the magnetic field was, how thick the atmosphere was. We do know that different type of atmospheres, liquids, and other such things do affect the concentration of energy from a weapon. The more it has to fire through an atmosphere, the more the energy is dispersed and weaker it gets. So therefore, basically, they maybe launched a prototype so they could gather data on Earth itself, its consistency, size, mass, atmospheric concentration, etc., and as a result be able to calibrate the larger weapon to actually be able to guarantee it could destroy the planet in one shot and not have to take another, risking the weapon and risking the plan in the first place. That is a possibility, but I'm sure there was much better ways of gathering that data than firing a prototype at the planet. But all the same, that was a massive flaw in their plan. The Xindi did have other plans to also attack and destroy humanity, which were thrown out. One of which was the use of a bioweapon. This was rejected by the Council, but originally suggested by the reptilians. The reason it wasn't used is because there was a risk that humans could have developed a cure, someone might have helped them, bioweapon may have been ineffective, it could have jumped species, maybe it could have affected them. There are all kinds of problems with using biogenetic warfare. And the Xindi decided against it, although the reptilians would go behind the back of the Council and still try to develop said weapon to use against humanity, albeit very unsuccessfully. And yeah, the tactic was massively flawed. Destroying your enemy, wiping them out, genocide is never an option. It should never be an option. There's always a better way. The Xindi went from 0 to 1 billion instantly. They never even considered that there was another option, which they really should have done. That being said, that's the end of this video. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below.
I just want to take this moment to thank you for watching that video. If you liked what you saw, please check out my social links in the description box below to Instagram and Twitter and others, and also is down there a link to my Patreon page where you can support this channel and the others as I try to grow this franchise and do this more regularly. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you for watching, and bye bye.